Just a few more moments. And now you may begin whenever you're ready.
Welcome to the March 27th, 2023 joint meeting of the CB6 Land Use and Waterfront Committee and the CB6 Housing and Homelessness Committee. My name is Sandra McKee and I'm the chair of the Land Use and Waterfront Committee. I will be chairing tonight's meeting. This meeting is called to order at 7:04 p.m. Tonight we are joined by District Manager Jesus Perez and Housing and Homelessness Committee Chair Rich Mintz. Members of the public, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. If there is time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. As a reminder, New York State law now requires all community board members to have their cameras on and their first and last names displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the time the meeting is adjourned. If your camera is not on and your name is not properly displayed, you cannot count towards quorum. Majed Abdul Samad will take the minutes tonight. Thank you, Majed. We will now take attendance by roll call for the Land Use and Waterfront Committee members. Jesus will conduct the roll call.
All right. Good evening, everyone. As Sandy mentioned, I will call your name and you will unmute yourself upon hearing your name and say present. At the end of the roll call, I will announce if there is quorum for members of the Land Use and Waterfront Committee. Let's begin. Majed Abdul Samad.
Present.
Thank you. Victoria Benatar.
Present.
Thank you. Jim Collins is excused. Jonathan DeRico.
Present.
Thank you. Adam Hartke. Adam Hartke.
Present.
Thank you. Rich Mintz.
Present.
Thank you. Larry Shire.
Present.
Thank you. Sandro Sherrod.
Sandro will be attending, but he mentioned he would be late.
Okay. Letty Simon is delayed. Susan Steinberg.
Susan also mentioned she would be delayed, but planned on attending.
All right. We'll move on then. Gabe Turzo.
Present.
Thank you. Brian Van Nieuwenhoven.
Present.
Thank you. With 9 out of 13 members present, the Land Use Committee does have quorum. Now, we can take attendance for the Housing Committee. Abigail Kruzmark.
Present.
Thank you. Again, Rich Mintz, who is on both committees.
Present.
Thank you. Sandra Leftoff.
Present.
Thank you. Maura Wong.
Present.
Thank you. Eric Goldberg.
Present.
Thank you. Michael Devereaux. Michael Devereaux. Okay, we'll move on. I don't hear his name, though I believe I did see him earlier. Nadim Kelani is excused. Matt Weintraub.
Present.
Thank you. With 6 out of 8 members present for the Housing Committee, the Housing Committee does have quorum. And I see Sandro is here for the Land Use Committee. Sandro?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, so let the record show Sandro is here. All right, both committees have quorum.
Mike
Devereaux is also.
All right, I will mark that Mike Devereaux is here.
Thank you.
The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and appears on the screen before you. If there are no objections, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Members of either committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the February 27th Land Use and Waterfront Committee meeting are still being drafted. Once they are ready for your review, they will be sent to you before they are adopted. Rich, this is your.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I don't have it open.
If you don't mind, I would say the minutes from the January 30th Housing and Homelessness Committee meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt the minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting these minutes, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the January 30th meeting are adopted. They will soon be available on the CB6 website. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, we have a few ground rules. No one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. The chat function should only be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you're having or to state state in writing information, an email address, for instance, that has already been stated aloud on the record during the meeting. When a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. Committee members are required by the Joint Open Meetings Law to have their Zoom cameras on and your first and last name displayed throughout tonight's meeting. If you must step away from your computer briefly, you are required to leave your camera on. So this, we're ready to proceed with our agenda. Number one on the agenda is the joint review with the Housing and Homeless Committee of proposals by Borough President Levine, Governor Hochul, and Mayor Adams that would facilitate faster permitting and construction of housing in New York City. And hopefully everyone had time to review some of the information that was sent out. 3 levels of government have all made housing and ostensibly affordable housing part of their agenda, and they all have proposals for it. We were going to start with a presentation by the Borough President's Office, but unfortunately that is not going to, they weren't able to attend this evening. So Jesus, if you wouldn't mind putting up the information from their handout.
Sure.
And the borough president has identified sites within CB6 that they feel are appropriate for one, either upzoning, which would then mandate mandatory inclusionary housing, or they are sites that are city-owned that could be utilized for housing. And there, I think we've identified the sites so we could take a look at those. So as they noted, some of these are currently being used by the city. And they identified in Kips Bay a total of 942 new units, 235 of those being affordable. And if we can keep scrolling on down. So one of the items that I believe all levels of government have identified is office conversions. That now that there's a decline in office use, especially in Midtown, that some of these properties could be repurposed as housing. One of the things that is associated with this is the fact that a lot of these office buildings have a higher FAR. Currently, only an FAR of 12 is allowed in the multiple dwelling law. So to get around this particular criteria, the proposal is to change the multiple dwelling law so that it's no longer 12 FARs, the maximum residential use for a site.
May I make a clarification?
Certainly.
The proposal is to change the law so that the city is permitted to allow a higher FAR at a given site. not that anyone would have that ability by right to build.
And yes, apparently there are several ways that the city could do this. So really what they're doing is taking that, allowing the city to control the FAR, residential FAR. And I know we sent out a memo that was done by George James, and he goes through some of the implications of this no longer mandating 12 FAR. And hopefully people again had the opportunity to take a look at that. So let's keep on going down, Jesus. We'll take a look at the sites. One thing, sorry, what they highlighted here was that they would speed up their ULUP review, which I guess could have implications for the community board because we may have to speed up our review as well. My sense is that the review is not the time-consuming aspect of a ULURP application, but it is one way that they're looking to help speed up the process. And some statistics about CB6 and the housing here, but these are the sites that they have identified. 307 3rd Avenue. And I think, Jesus, you're going to show us each of these on the map, right?
Yes.
420 1st Avenue. That is part of the, it's currently the medical examiner's office. And these other two sites are privately owned.
Is the assumption that the facility currently in the medical examiner's office there would move into the new health campus at Brookdale?
I believe so. They call it Spark, and that's one of the things that they mentioned as part of that program. That site would become available, that they would be moving in. And in the documentation, they talk about it being an excellent site for health workers because it is so close to hospitals.
Right.
I know I can see that.
Here's the first of those sites that you wanted, 307 3rd Avenue.
And Rich, you mentioned this is visible from your apartment. Is that correct? And I guess one of the questions is why this site hasn't been developed yet, because you can see there's development all around it. But certainly if the zoning was increased, then mandatory inclusionary housing would come into play. Any thoughts on this particular site? Brian?
I was just going to say Rich is going to have an opinion on that, but his camera froze, so just give him a second.
Okay. And maybe
Can
we'll
I
come
be
back.
here? Can I be?
Rich is okay. Abigail, do you want to go ahead?
Just had a question that occurred to me. I'm not sure if anyone would know this, but I'm assuming if it was included in the report, they had checked, the air rights of the building and whether those had been allocated to neighboring parcels. I just didn't know if anybody knew that.
I'm pretty sure they have already checked that, but from the scale of the adjacent buildings, I don't think that they've taken advantage.
Okay.
It's certainly something we could confirm. Rich, did you want to make a comment? Yeah, we're having connectivity problems, I think. Michael.
Hey, thank you. when we spoke about this in our committee, about, like middle-class housing for like teachers and nurses and firefighters, maybe even, police officers or something. If it's a city-owned property, could this be geared towards housing of that?
This particular property is not city-owned. This is a private one, but certainly, yes, I think that's something that could be investigated. I know the issues of affordability have not been clarified in really any of the proposals that have been put forward. Majed?
Yeah, so my question about this is the same about the next lot we'll get to, which is 666 First Avenue, where currently the solo lot. I wonder if lifting the FAR cap will make any difference to their decision whether to develop it, because it's just sitting vacant. I would presume not, because MIH is not going to make it more appealing for them to develop it. So I'm just curious, actually.
Yes, and I'm not sure what mechanism. I think they're also talking about some potentially tax incentives to go forward. Rich, hopefully we can hear you now.
Yeah. Do you hear me now?
Yes, yeah.
Do you hear me? Okay, good.
Mhm.
My understanding is that this site is can be built to 24 stories as of right, just like the other three corners. It's possible that air rights were given to the building that is now the NYU dorm directly across the street, and that's the reason why this hasn't been built. But if that's not the case, this can be built out just like the other ones. That building you see on the right is about to open, and it's built to 24 stories with the enhanced density that you get for affordable housing and community facilities.
Okay, Sandra.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a little confused about how one attains the property, it's private property. Is that by eminent domain? How does that work?
The city is not proposing to take over the property. They're encouraging a developer to develop it with affordable housing.
Oh, okay. So that's a different, right. So we don't really know what will evolve from that. Right.
We don't.
Okay. And it's probably in my reading, there's nothing to define affordability in the document. What are we really talking about, which is, I find problematic.
And unfortunately, it really is a bit undefined in all of the proposals.
Yeah. But you can go up to 150%, and they have done that, and that's a lot of money. That's a big income, or 100% even. But anyhow, so but that goes to this that you don't. I didn't understand it, but this is very helpful. Thank you.
Brian.
Yeah, I wanted to say that given these proposals in terms of policy, the city is not taking control of these sites and saying what exactly is going to happen on them. But it's very predictable what will happen given past history and the incentives across federal, state, and city law. Essentially, they will build more dense properties. They'll be able to get additional zoning above and beyond the FAR cap for these sites, and they'll be able to get air rights and whatever they need. They'll be able to enter the federal affordable housing program and get some stuff out of that, and they're incentivized to do it. And then they will just simply add more housing to these sites. And I think that, one thing that is a concern to the city is to make sure that no site gets developed beyond its capacity to connect to transportation or to connect to utilities or anything like that. And those are simply not issues at sites in our district. We are really fine with connecting to utilities, especially for residential. We have room on transit to connect people at these sites. We have developed so little over recent years that we have a long way to catch up to go. And the fact that lenders are willing to provide financing to these developers is a positive thing. In terms of what actually counts as an affordable apartment, I think the program is mislabeled in terms of what it's doing. It's actually setting, certain income levels and providing the developer with some, additional revenue in exchange for making those apartments available at those income levels. So those income levels are essentially working class adults in the neighborhood, and we have lost all of the developments and all of the programs in the neighborhood that were built or crafted around providing housing for working class adults. So this is pretty much what we have left, even though it seems like the income requirements are pretty high for some of those apartments. And in some of those cases, some of the apartments are set for pretty low income folks. But in either case, we definitely need more housing, and that should not be something that we hold up anything on. And it's not really part of the city's zoning proposal anyway. It's part of the federal government's proposal. We could always have a separate discussion about how the federal government structures that program. But this is one of the key parts of the puzzle, is unlocking zoning to allow these developments and allow people to move in. So that's about it. Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
can I ask that we look at some of the other sites, because I don't think this one is actually that important, given that it's probably buildable as of right anyway.
Right. Okay, let's, Victoria, you had your hand raised, but let's keep moving on if you're okay. Do you have a specific question about this one?
Well, I wanted to ask if we know how big the lot is and what's the new FIR will be.
So the proposal is either to increase FAR or to have a text amendment. So I think there are two ways that they're potentially considering increasing it. But the lot area we can find, it's certainly public.
This lot is big enough to build 117 units without an FAR change.
Yeah.
This can build to 24 stories without any change, and will accommodate 117 units. It's about 2/3 of the size of the building you see across the street in terms of coverage.
So let's move on to the other sites so we see the variety that are available.
I'm excited about this one because this is a city building that looks nearly empty on a day-to-day basis.
It's on a wide street. It's a great location. And it is city owned, this one. So there's the potential for the city to actually partner with the developer or, somehow work through how to get housing into this site. And let's keep on moving. What the others that were identified?
That's everyone's favorite site.
And so the ULIP that was passed has inclusionary housing. It's not mandatory, but if affordable housing is included, they can build higher. And I think this was back in 2008 that the zoning was approved. So yes, previous iterations of how they wanted to deal with affordable housing. And currently, of course, there is a proposal for the casino on this site, which I think would also open up, if it's a potential to negotiate, I guess, that the developer could provide additional affordable housing if the casino was to go ahead. Like, it's sort of a carrot and stick thing they're offering, I believe. Next one. So this is the Department of Environmental Protection, the garage, which also seems to be sort of empty. I'm not sure how it works with the building next to it, which is a Glick building. But it is identified as a potential site. It's right by the waterfront.
I'm not sure that it's empty. I always do see a lot of vehicles in there, but it's a very perfectly valid question that is this, a garage, essentially, the best use for land right here in this particular part of the district?
Yeah. And it does seem to be just vehicles. I'm not sure there's any even office use. Abigail? Sorry, I'm not sure.
I just want to mention the building right to the right of that is Bidewy. And they're actually moving to a new facility in Chelsea. It's an animal shelter. The move was originally scheduled for this month, but I think it got pushed to June. So yeah, that one.
And that's part of the Glick development.
So yeah, I don't know anything about the ownership of the building, but I do know the animal shelter itself is moving.
Michelle.
So I have a comment and a question. I put in the chat, and for everybody, you can just go to Zola NYC. You can look up all these lots to see what is their total area, just square footage, what is their zoning, and what's its allowance. You can click the link, the second link I sent, that you just, again, it's Zola NYC for anybody tuning in. That's where you see exactly, what's the FAR, exactly, what can they build? Now, my question here, Sandy, is for that lot, it's M105. So their FAR is pretty low, is 5. So to raise it to 12 is absolutely great and I think significant. But I'm curious what's the plan to navigate the conflict with neighboring buildings? In this case, the Horizon 415 East 37th has windows facing all that area. And if they are allowed to build a FAR of 12, they will block quite a lot of units.
I believe as long as they meet zoning requirements, that's probably, many people unfortunately get their views blocked. That'll happen with the solo site as well.
Right, except in this case, it actually a zoning change. So they will be closer than 60 feet to certain bedrooms, living rooms. So this is a gray area, and I'm curious whether the plan addresses it.
It does not, but I assume that they have, well, the idea is that the architect or whoever is developing it will be able to utilize the site to the maximum they can and still meet code requirements for the adjacent building. Larry.
This building that is a garage is being utilized by the Department of Environmental Protection. And the entrance to the garage is on 37th Street. That I recall when we were on the Transportation Committee trying to put a bike lane there. It's a very active facility at the present time. But there was an interesting question that was raised with respect to the air rights. Is it possible that the city might have sold off air rights to the Horizon when it was being built? That I don't know. It's only speculation.
And hopefully the city or the borough president has vetted all of these sites. I believe they have. We can certainly confirm with them. But that's my understanding, is that they have identified, actually they've scoped out the number of units they feel could be utilized on these sites.
Yeah, this was a long, this is a year-long process, so I'm pretty sure they did look into that.
Yeah. Are there any more, Jesus, that they identified?
No. Solo was listed twice. 666 First Avenue is Solo, as far as I can tell. But Soloviev seems to use 700 and 708 First Avenue. As far as I can tell, those are all the same. Okay. They may refer to different parts of the lot, but they don't seem to use 666. I can imagine it's not an auspicious address to have, but maybe that's why they use 700 and 708. Because according to Zola, this is 666 First Avenue, but it's owned by 700 First Realty, which is what the address they use.
And of course, there's hopes that the new Spark development, which would replace the Brookdale site, would also potentially have some affordable housing for students or for CUNY students. That was one of the things that came up as well. I know when the borough president presented this, they asked if we in our community knew of other buildings that might be appropriate, that were underutilized, that were city-owned properties.
I think
Eric?
that, oh, go ahead.
Oh, it was just a quick question. When you, just because you mentioned about identifying other properties, there's obviously a lot of land along the waterfront. And not suggesting we want to give that to developers, but just as a conversation, there's like parking lots near the water between 34th and 23rd Street. So it was just a question on how things like that were explored for the group.
And I know that particular location, the NYU parking facility, it's been, well, the board has looked at that for quite a while as potential park space.
Right.
And
Yeah,
there's
and that yeah. Well, please go ahead.
yeah, some negotiations have been going on. I'm not sure how far ahead, but that was definitely the goal for that particular site.
Right. And that piece certainly aware of and makes sense. It was even going south, and I forget what the restaurant and the boat is called that has that huge parking lot that sits empty all the time. Again, the best use to me would not be to build housing there, but it's just right now sitting there empty all the time.
And the parking garage that's a little further down. I don't know if you can scroll down to that, Jesus. That's actually, it's an EDC site. And again, parking in that location doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, but apparently it's a big money generator.
Got it. Okay.
Not that that's a reason to keep it.
Yeah.
Majed.
Jesus, can I ask please to go to 2nd Avenue and 36 once we're just done looking at this? Specifically, there are a cluster of lots. 237 East 36. Oh, yeah, just that also works. Yeah, exactly. So this is, I'm curious, Sandy, if the city already, exactly, these are 2, 4, 6, 7, 8 lots, which are all parking to the left. Yeah, exactly. Look, it's right. So if the city is identifying private properties, just like they do with the solo lot, I wonder why this was not identified. This has been sitting as a surface parking in a prime area. It is zoned C19, so really low FAR, just 2. If that was to be up to 12, it's a giant lot and it can accommodate a lot of housing. Add MIH to it. This can make big difference in our district. So I'm just curious.
I don't know why. I know this site too, and I was wondering about it. I assumed the reason was that it was owned by the city or by the MTA. But if it's not
actually. This is owned by S&M Enterprises, so it's just private ownership. It's parking lot. So right now serving as a G7, but the zoning of it is C19. So there is some housing allowed, but it's too little for it to make financial sense for them to develop it. So I get that.
Okay.
And Jesus, do you know some of the history of this? I know the billboard doesn't meet any of the current requirements. So I think there's been some discussion with this owner in the past by the board.
There has. I believe the billboard is gone now. This image from June 2022 seems to
billboard's gone.
Yeah. Whenever I go down there, I never seem to think to look there to see if it's gone, but I think it's gone. Yes, Adam confirmed that it's gone. So yeah, there was a long time ago. I did tend to look at my notes because this was years ago at this point. A developer who was interested in perhaps building on the site, maybe doing some sort of park that was cantilevered over something or other. And obviously, I guess it didn't really go anywhere because it doesn't, nothing ever came of it, but there's been a history with this particular lot, especially involving CB6. Largely, though, it was wanting to get that sign removed.
And Sandra, maybe you have some more insight onto this.
No, I was just going to add, I mean, this is, of course, not, but immediately adjacent to the entrance to the tunnel. So I think that there was, if I recall years ago, some review of what the construction impact would have on the tunnel. And that was kind of identified as a potential non-starter from the city's perspective at that point. I don't know if that's still the case. It's the other way, Zeus, actually.
Well, I think certainly we should question whether this can't be added to the list.
Yep, I think it's a valid. It
Absolutely
requires a rethink.
And I know there were certain areas where they thought we could maybe increase from R8 to R12. And I don't know if that was specifically identified in the document, but I believe it's on.
Yeah, it was. It's Second Avenue between roughly between 23rd and 30th on the west side of the street. Basically across from Kips Bay Plaza on the west side of Second Avenue. It's all mostly 5 and 6 story original buildings. And the proposal by the borough president is to bring it up to the same height as the other side.
Which is something that would, if the community did support, would help to move that forward. There is one new building that's under construction just south of 34th Street, but that's the only new construction in that area.
Is that the building on the east side at like 30 between 33rd and 32nd? Oh yeah, here we go. No, that's 23rd. Yeah. I'm seeing all my stomping grounds in this aerial tour.
It's now my route to work, so I also see it. It's up, the one I was thinking was up at 34th. But if I know in the past the board or the community board has talked about supporting rezoning in this area, so certainly if that's something that that may come before us that the borough president has recommended. Any other sites? I know there was some discussion of potentially over top of libraries, because the Kips Bay Library, for instance, is only 2 stories. It's also on a corner site, rebuild the library and housing above. Abigail.
I wanted to mention on First Avenue and let's say 38th, there's a lot of green space around the tunnel across from St. Burton's Park that's very gated. I've never really quite understood why it's so gated or what the use for that is, but it's at the east side of the tunnel. I would be interested in learning more about like the use for that land, whether anything could be built on it or, potentially opened into a park. It just seems every time I walk by it like a waste of green space. It's just so, I don't know, unused. So that would be my recommendation.
I'll let Adam address that. It is one of the hot spots in our neighborhood.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that parcel of land is right over the mouth of the actual tunnel. So right underneath it are the tubes. So any sort of development there is probably going to be a non-starter. And the reason it's so fenced off is cited mainly for security and access purposes. So I know there are community members who are trying to get this open in some capacity, but really they would have to petition the MTA and specifically MTA Bridges and Tunnels to open this up. But in terms of development, 99% not happening.
Okay. Thanks for the insight.
Larry.
We've not mentioned anything concerning the area around Beth Israel Hospital. Currently, there's a vacant lot on First Avenue at the southwest corner of East 17th Street, I believe. If you could pull that up on the screen. And in addition to that, over the last several years, there it is. That's it. It's East 18th Street.
And I believe this was sold as part of the Beth Israel, anticipation of moving. And I don't know who the developer is, but it may be they're waiting for better, to make more money off of it. But it definitely was slated to be developed.
It's a good one to push for.
Yeah, we could find out more about it. So
you keep an eye on it.
Yes,
that's my suggestion.
That's a good call, Larry. Thank you. That's a good one.
You're welcome. And as far as any future plans that Beth Israel has, going forward, which maybe we're not privy to, because they're not going to completely shut down. But if there are going to be any buildings there that they deem to be obsolete, that might in the future present additional opportunities.
Okay, so we've added a few to the list here. Any others that any other recommendations?
It's worth our all looking at this and coming back to the committee with future sites. It's an ongoing process. Like we don't really need a full list today. I think our goal today is just to establish whether we're in general in favor of the plan, right?
Right. And any sites that we have, we'll immediately give to the borough president so they can kind of take a look at them. And it just enhances the whole program. But no, you're right. We don't need it today. This is going to be ongoing. Take a look and see ones that you would recommend. And you can send them into the committee. Adam.
And we have an open channel with the borough president. They're very happy for our support and collaboration. So we shouldn't hold back anything. They love hearing from us.
Right, and they will confirm it. So, and sorry, Adam, go ahead.
No, apologies. So do we want to take a look at the resolution or do we want to look at some more sites?
I think we should take a look at the resolution, and
okay.
This is an ongoing process. So Jesus, do you mind pulling up the resolution?
No, not at all. FYI, there was a communication that went out from the borough president's office and the office of Keith Powers, or one of our council members, in which they asked the MTA for that site that was spoken about a few moments ago, this one, this green space. And MTA actually wrote back. We have a copy of the letter, and effectively they say nope, no go for operational and safety reasons, and because MTA might need this in the future, this is not an appropriate place to build anything. So in case anyone's interested in that, and let me pull up this resolution that oops, I lost it. All right, can you guys see it? Okay.
Did everyone get the opportunity to review this prior to the meeting? Hopefully. Adam?
Yeah, I think this is a really well-written resolution. I'm personally satisfied to vote on it as is.
May I add a comment about this? This was modeled off of a model resolution provided by Manhattan Community Board 3, with some adaptations to make it more specific to our district, and with some modifications to the resolves to be more precise about what we want. But this is part of a collaborative effort among multiple community boards to all express support for the Borough President's plan to generate some momentum in the City Council.
Majid?
So I also think this is great, fully in support of it. I wonder if the second be there for the result, if we want to, we said take action quickly through legislation and regulation. I wonder if we want to be a little more specific and call out vacant lots, vacant undeveloped lots, and you know, we're not going for specific action, but just asking for Board President, the council, the mayor to look into incentivizing developers who own vacant lots and just sit on them vacant for decades and decades to, you know, take action on this, study ways to incentivize them to take advantage of this law.
Sorry, Jonathan? I guess first off, do we want to add that into this resolution?
As the original author, for simplicity, I would be willing to add at the end, including by incentivizing the owners of vacant or underdeveloped lots to build housing more, you know, to build housing or something like that. Majed, is there specific wording like that you would be comfortable with?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I can try to type in the chat a quick amendment and see if folks agree to it.
Okay.
All right, I'll type it.
Okay, sorry, Jonathan.
This is borderline silly. I was just taught that footnotes go outside semicolon, and I think there's a couple we have inside the semicolon.
Oh no!
I know. The super substantive comments are coming out of the woodwork. I think it's great. I really love this.
Okay. I think we can edit that. Victoria.
What would be a good incentive for the developers to do what Majid is suggesting?
Usually it comes down to taxes, fines. Those are, you know, the two sort of things that they have as sticks. Or, I mean, I think in this case, the hope is that by allowing more FAR or rezoning, that's one of the ways to go ahead and do it. I'm not sure we need to actually identify exactly how to do it. But, and Sandra.
Yeah, yes, it's great. I'm unfortunately going to go back to my same comment, which is without knowing how affordability gets defined or holding people to a commitment, I don't really know what I'm voting. I mean, I understand that it will create more development in the area, but I've seen too many times where the real affordability gets skirted. And if we, you know, promote this without any restrictions or without any expectations, I have real concerns that we're never going to see the 50% AMI in this or whatever. We're going to see a lot of 100 or 120%. And that would be a shame. So as written, there's no requirement like that. Now I understand maybe we can't get into that detail, but I find it problematic.
I actually, Sandy, if I can respond to that, I actually think that's a good note. And we might want to add a short, be it further resolves, that Manhattan Community Board 6 supports the highest practical percentage of affordable housing, including I don't know what the term is, but extremely affordable housing or something like that, to make clear that we don't just want to roll with whatever the market will provide.
Yes, and whatever it is, it's funny because you were mentioning about CUNY students. CUNY students are homeless and for various reasons. One of them is, as soon as their area is gentrified, those families begin to lose access to affordable housing. And so it's got to be there someplace. It's got to say, 30% is also affordable, is also part of affordability, 50% is. And so however we put it, and I hate to do it in a without, and I don't know how you do it in a defining way, it gives so much leeway to developers that, so again, I don't know how it would work in a resolution like this, but there's got to be some way to hold people to a commitment for true affordability.
I'm gonna write a proposed amendment in the chat in response to Sandra, to Sandra, and in the meantime, Majed has dealt with his proposal in the chat, and we can discuss that. Just eyeballing what's here, it looks fine to me. So I'm going to type, and Sandy, let you talk.
Okay, and again, I think that's great. We really should identify that as one of our concerns. So if we can add that, and in the chat, so the amendment, just, I'm not sure if everybody can see this, but is to take action quickly through legislation and regulation to incentivize. Oh, here we go. So Jesus has got it in there. Okay. And then I think once Rich has a chance to put this in, that we probably are ready to vote on this resolution. I'm not sure if someone has to actually propose that. And I think it will be a joint resolution between our two committees. So we'll all vote on it collectively.
I just wrote something simple about affordability in the chat.
So we probably should handle these one by one.
Okay.
So Majed, are you formally making a motion to amend this resolution?
Yes, using the text that's on screen.
All right. Is it seconded by anyone?
I'll second it.
All right.
I second it.
And we can probably do this with a show of hands.
Zoom hands or human hands?
Zoom hands, unfortunately. So anybody who's in favor of that, of Majed's proposed amendment, raise your hand. And it looks like it looks like it passes.
We've got 17 people, 17 people in favor. Everyone put their hand down. All right, hands down, please. There's still one more hand. Majed, I'm lowering your hand. Okay. Anyone opposed to this amendment? I guess not. Anybody abstaining? Anybody not entitled?
I just have a question. It's just for this one.
For the amendment.
I think it's just vague. That's my only issue.
Did you vote?
I did not vote.
Okay, well.
I'll abstain.
Okay, one abstention.
Okay, and let's go on to Rich's proposed.
Right. So where are we putting this amendment here?
I think this goes in the
replace the existing language beginning with take action quickly.
Okay, well, his
Community Board 6 calls on all stakeholders, including the mayor, borough president, city council, Department of City Planning, and other city administrative agencies to take action quickly through legislation and regulation to incentivize developers to develop vacant lots, take advantage of proposed legislation, and to enable the borough president's recommendation to be carried out. And then this goes away?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, then that vote has passed. This resolution is now amended. All right, now Rich had one.
I just wrote very simple language on affordability, so that as Sandra says, we can make our position clear. And we should look at this before we. Yeah.
Okay, so again, a show of hands for those who support adding this into the resolution.
Has it been seconded?
May I be recognized?
Sorry, Larry, I didn't see your hand.
Could we add to this? I'm sorry that it says in a increase in the share of apartments. There's got to be something about fair share and representative more of the city demographics on income, because a sharp increase in the share of apartments doesn't really, something about reflecting the financial state of city residents that says it's not just increasing truly affordable, but that we have, we have, I don't know what percentage, say there 30% are at 50% or lower of the AMI. So can we say that a sharp increase in the share of apartment truly affordable, reflecting the demographics, the financial status of citizens of residents of the city, so that we're talking about something that reflects truly the demographics of where
I don't know what the parliamentary process is at this moment, but I would support that.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, great.
And sorry, Larry, did you have something you wanted to add?
And Larry was speaking.
Yes, and in order to increase the emphasis of this, Rich, look at the first resolved.
Yep.
And if that could be fleshed out with this concept, with respect to affordability, instead of generically referring to the recommendations, that might make it stronger and get eyes on that subject before anything else.
You mean essentially put our opinions on affordability into the very first resolved, rather than adding a third one? I wouldn't object to that either. I mean, we're at a point where we're now writing a resolution in real time, and that makes me a little uncomfortable. Not because I think it's improper, but it's time consuming. But I think it would be good. So, Sandy, I would defer to you as to what you would like to do now.
Well, I see there are 6 hands up. I don't know if this is everyone who has a comment on this particular issue.
Folks were maybe unclear that we were not voting because the procedure has been a little bit wishy-washy. So no motion has been made. It has not been seconded. So you guys can still debate and play with the language. We're still at that stage.
Thank you.
It is slightly unusual to try and write it real time. But we'll have 3 more people and see if we can come to a resolution, a final resolution here. Eric? Eric, your hand was raised.
Oh, sorry, I had not taken it down, but yeah.
Okay.
No comment.
Dave.
Thank you. Could we just do something very simply, like matching or exceeding the current maximum of AMI units already existing in the board area? Just so we have an objective standard.
I'm not sure how many we have currently. Do you mind repeating that again, Gabe? Sorry, I'm not sure.
It's like as a percentage. So we asked that these new units match or exceed the current quantity of affordable units as a percentage of total, with the matching or exceeding the highest quantity at the lowest AMI. You know what I'm trying to say? So there's a benchmark that we can ask for.
You're trying to say, if I can write out loud, you're trying to say, and that new housing developed under this plan include at least as much proportional affordable housing as currently exists in the district, or something like that. But we're really looking for more.
Yeah, like whatever units we have that currently have AMI units in them, we should, whatever that standard is, they should match or exceed that, whatever is currently best offered within CB6.
And I'm not sure, I mean, it's a little more complicated because the MIH, there's certain, you can build percentages and it's a little more complicated.
Yeah, I was just trying to make something more objective, but not married to.
Yeah. Let's keep that in mind and let's see if other people, like Michael, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to make a note. I've heard some things about the demographics in the city. I would love it to concentrate more on our district. I just feel like there's a lot of people being priced out of our district. I know Stuytown, which used to be affordable, is now $4,000 for a 1-bedroom. None of our elected officials could raise a family in Stuytown right now with their salary. I mean, just think about that. If you're the state senator, assembly person, or city councilman, you couldn't have a 2-bedroom and literally afford it with a single income by serving your district. So I would love to just keep it more towards our district, more than the whole city as a whole, if possible.
And Sandra, you had your hand.
Well, I was trying to figure out how to just do it in a couple of words. So what I said was, and I forgot where I added because I don't see it now, but just to say, reflecting the financial demographics of the city, I did keep it of the city as opposed to our district, because I really think our district is highly concentrated in higher income. And I understand the rest, which is we have eliminated the middle class, but if we're really serious about wanting to open this up to, people in New York City, then we really have to take that fairly take it into account. So that was a phrase I had, but it was, I could stick it in some ways in here, but now I can't find it. Okay.
I like that phrase. And I think you're correct that we are, believe it or not, relatively fortunate. I know that our percentage of rent burden is lower than the city average, despite all of the challenges we're facing. I mean, if we wanted to, I wouldn't object to just sticking what you just wrote at the end of the red paragraph, if we keep the red paragraph. But we're still discussing whether to keep the red paragraph. For now, though, it's okay to stick it there.
Okay, and let's just have a couple more comments here and try and wrap this up. Gabe, did you have another comment? Your hand's still up? Or okay, thanks. And Victoria.
Yeah, can we say including those of low income as necessary in the district or as required in the district? So it's including the district and the people that need it?
I think Sandra was trying to make us even more generous because the rest of the city is in even greater financial need than the people of our district. I think that's why she said the city.
And yes, I'm sorry, I know I'm out of turn, but that's exactly what I meant. That we don't reflect the city at all, in our incomes. And I think we need to be more open.
Well, sorry.
Sorry. We have other hands.
I don't think so. So let's add that Sandra's comments there, and then we can vote on this if we feel comfortable with this text.
I would make a motion that we vote on this amendment.
Okay. Second?
I'll second it.
Great. And then show of hands, all those in support, if you could raise your hand through Zoom. And those against, let's, everybody please lower, and those against, now raise your hands. Okay, abstaining? Abstaining for cause. Oops, sorry, Rich, were you abstaining?
No, I was trying to lower a hand that was already lowered.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so this will be added into the resolution. And I think now we can vote on the resolution. I think we've had all the comments.
We added it right here at as a third resolved.
That's correct.
Okay.
We call the question.
I'll call the question. Did you call the question,
Yes.
Sandra?
I was trying to, but I can second if you
Okay.
want to call it.
No, that's be my guest.
Okay.
I'll call the question then.
It's been called and I believe seconded by Letty.
Yep.
So if we could vote on this, do we have to do that for a roll call?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
All right. I'll start with the Land Use Committee. We will vote on the resolution as amended. Please, when I call your name, indicate whether you are in favor, opposed, whether you abstain, or whether you are not entitled. Majed Abdul Samad.
In favor.
Thank you. Victoria Benatar.
In favor.
Thank you. Jim Collins is excused. Jonathan DeRico.
In favor.
Thank you. Adam Hartke.
In favor.
Thank you. Sandra McKee.
In favor.
Thank you. Rich Mintz.
In favor.
Thank you. Larry Shire.
In favor.
Thank you. Sandro Sherrod.
Aye.
Thank you. Letty Simon.
In favor.
Thank you. Susan Steinberg.
In favor.
Thank you. Gabe Turzo.
In favor.
Thank you. Brian Ben Nieuwenhoven.
In favor.
Thank you. All right, now I'll move on to the Housing Committee.
I don't think, oh, sorry.
Abigail Cruzmark.
In favor.
Thank you. Rich, well, Rich.
In favor.
Yes. We won't count your vote twice. Sandra Leftoff.
In favor.
Okay, 1 second. All right. Maura Wong.
In favor.
Thank you. Eric Goldberg.
In favor.
Thank you. Michael Devereaux.
In favor.
Thank you. Nad Kalani is excused. Matthew Weintraub.
In favor.
Thank you. And with 18 in favor, this resolution passes and moves on to full board.
Sorry, muted. We were going to take a brief look at the governor's proposals. In the State of the State book listed her proposals, and Jesus, do you mind pulling those up? Again, this is a really big topic. There are a lot of moving parts to it. And unfortunately, right now, we don't have a lot of detail. So we're just going to take a brief look at this. So replacing the 421A program is something that is included in this, although again, we don't quite know what the proposal is to do that. Reduce land use regulations that translate directly into higher housing prices and less construction. And again, no, we don't quite know what that is. Does that mean, reduce the ULERT process? It's just not very well defined. And encourage new housing near transit. Of course, that doesn't apply so much to our district, but it certainly does apply to other parts of the city. Provide funding to support planning and infrastructure needs. It's a statewide database to promote transparency. Remove obstacles to housing approvals. So expediting the environmental review process. Again, we don't know what that means, and it's always been something that the community board has been very interested in. Give the city of New York the flexibility to increase residential capacity by removing the FAR, which we mentioned at the beginning. So really it's taking out of the state's hands and putting it into the cities. Greater opportunities to convert office spaces. And one of the things there is to change the date of the office buildings that will be allowed to convert. So right now, forgive me, I don't remember, I think it's 1969. Anything built after that isn't acceptable. And so they're trying to negotiate what exact date that should be. Other critical, and legalizing basement apartments. This is something that both the mayor and the governor have talked about. And actually the budget committee heard from Harvey Epstein. He's one of the supporters of the bill, and they'll hear from him again. One of the bills that is being discussed is about ADUs, which are ancillary dwelling units.
Accessory.
Accessory dwelling units. And that bill actually sets out a path to legalize basement apartments, which the bill that's in front of the budget committee is more about funding the program to make it work. We have a copy of that, but it's I think that's another meeting to discuss that, and maybe have someone from Assemblyman Epstein's office come and explain a little bit more the details of that. Let's see, and then tax incentives. So ADUs, property tax exemptions, and again, not a lot of detail, but as a concept, something to move forward with. And
can I add a bit of current color to this?
Yes, please.
Some of these issues are being talked about in the legislature as things that could be dealt with during the budget process, which is underway right now. I think they have 30 days to get that all resolved. So far, the legislator is indicating that they are not supportive, both houses, of the two most controversial provisions in here, which are the FAR modification and the idea that cities and municipalities and villages would have to meet targets, and if they didn't meet the targets, the state could authorize development in their stead. And so I don't know if those things are going to happen. A lot of these other things are likely to happen in one form or another because they are ways for legislators to say we did something about housing that will make an incremental difference that aren't too controversial. And so I think we can expect a lot of these things to happen, but we should watch for the bills about specifics like the ADUs, which will help define how these things are going to happen and give us an opportunity maybe to weigh in and shape them.
And for instance, the ADU bill was introduced in 2019 and was not supported. So I don't know if maybe the tide has changed or if there's going to be some other modifications to it, but it does seem that it's something that's an idea that has, its time has come, that it could help with our housing crisis. So, and that's basically the governors. The mayors, we're going to hear about, or the proposals for housing are the last thing to be developed. The next one is the, sorry, I'm losing steam. But next month, we're going to be hearing from them on, I think it's zoning for sustainability.
Zero carbon.
Basically, yes, because it's and they're trying to time it with Earth Day on the 22nd. So city planning is going to come and give us a presentation on that, what's involved there, but that's not necessarily housing related. So, yeah, as I mentioned, housing is the last of their proposals that's going to be fully fleshed out. So I was telling Rich, we may want to do a joint meeting again once we get some more information. I think it's really helpful, and it definitely, it's land use and housing are so interlinked in this particular topic. And we can share the documents, that document from the mayor's office, and also the link to, the governor's office, and the link to her documentation. I'm going to move on to the chair's report. So Kyle, Majed, Jesus, Brendan, and I met with the Solo team, and they agreed to give our committee monthly updates on their proposal. They did not have any substantive additional information on the proposal itself. They've hired architects, they've hired designers, but really didn't have any additional information they could share than that one rendering that we'd already seen. So that is, they also mentioned that it's not a fast process. It's going to be years to develop the site. So that's a good, at least they're coming to us to tell us what's going on.
Were they nice?
I'm sorry?
Were they nice?
Majed, how would you? Majed was there.
I think they're extremely nice and very kind folks. We might have misalignment on goals, but yeah, they're very nice people.
It was a professional meeting. Okay, good.
And actually, it turns out that the matriarch of the family lives in the district. So Mr. Solo's elderly wife lives in the district, and 3 of their adult grandchildren also live in the district. So they're neighbors. Yeah.
Where do we know where they live? Skytown?
My guess is the
Murray Hill somewhere.
Opposite
The what?
The Richard Meyer building opposite the site is my guess.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay.
But we don't know. We don't know. Letty, you have your hand up?
Yeah, did they identify? I know that they said that there were other stakeholders. Have they identified the other stakeholders other than CB6?
They have not, but I do know they've been reaching out to some of the community groups.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And I believe, didn't they say they had reached out to the UN in the meeting?
Good luck. I don't know.
Sorry, Majed or
I think they said it's in their plans, but they have not had discussions with the UN, which was another question mark we had.
Yeah, I think we may have been the first people they reached out to. Yeah. And then I had a discussion with John Keller today about the issue of the Education Committee is interested in looking at some of the office buildings that are being repurposed into housing to include schools, which did also seem like a good idea because it's, we're providing this additional housing and we need to, yes, Matt, I think that was your recommendation. We need to provide services that go along with it. So that's something that we wanted to talk to some of our elected officials about. And Rich, do you have a chair's report?
I don't have a chair's report other than to say that given the time, I think we should kick our conversation about resources for tenants to next week. To next month.
Okay. Is there any committee new or old committee business from either committee? Letty, is that your hand up from before, or did you have a comment? Okay. Any new or old business? Okay. If there's no objections, we will adjourn the meeting. And seeing no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 8:23. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sandy.